welcome to these introductory talks on the book The Resolute Leader. It's available all over the place through all distributors, so you can check it out for yourself. But the purpose of these 6 videos really is to just give you a taste of what the content of the book is about. And in this particular talk, the kind of lead up to me writing it and why it was important for me, I think, to get this book out into the hands, particularly of young and emerging leaders. That's the real target audience of this book. So if you're just starting out or you're just making your way forward, then this book really has been written to help you out. An experienced Christian worker or a pastor and cross-cultural missionary wrote me after reading the book and basically said, if I'd only had this book 42 years ago when I began my ministry, it would have been such a help. So if you're starting out, it will be a help. And I hope to convince you of that as I do these talks over the next little while. I'd only been a pastor for about 1 year when there was a murder on the steps of our church. We lived in a kind of a city area, and it was a pretty downtrodden part of the city, and lots of incidents went on there. And our church was really located strategically, I think, by God to meet that need. And I remember I was away camping on an Easter trip, and we were just setting up our tent. It was pouring rain, freezing cold, and the people next door to us gave us a bit of their kindling. And among the kindling was a newspaper, and the headline of that newspaper was this murder on the steps of our church. And I remember for me it was a real moment of saying, okay, God, what are we to do to at least alleviate some of the need in the city that we're living in? As a young leader, I had a passion to basically help God's people move forward, to lead God's people actually into the mission. And so that murder became for me a very big turning point in my ministry as a startup leader. And I began to ask God, well, how do I lead? How do I work this out? How do I take people where you want them to go? So important to this whole book and the whole idea behind the book is that God does give people a God-given mission, something that they are given by God to do and to take other people with them, to lead other people with them. So I remember standing where the murder had taken place, right on the spot on the street, and really crying out to God, to ask God to show me how to become the kind of leader that I needed to be. Well, that's about 18 years ago now that happened, and God has developed me as a leader. There's still more for me to learn. I learn all the time, but God has developed me as a leader over those years. But what he took me to back in that day was Exodus chapter 18 and the account of Jethro giving Moses some leadership advice at the very start of Moses' leadership journey. He was a rookie leader. He'd only been a leader for a year or so, and he was really struggling with being a one-man band and trying to do everything by himself. And I think that is a fairly common rookie error when it comes to leadership. We have so much passion and there's so much that we want to do, and very often early in our leadership development we make the mistake of trying to do it all ourselves, or at least doing too much by ourselves. So Jethro, who was a seasoned leader by this point, came to Moses and he said, Moses, what you are doing is not good. That's what the Bible says. I guess that's a leadership report that some of us fear to have, and I guess there are times in our ministries where we do need to sort of have some honest feedback. So Jethro says to Moses, his son-in-law, Moses, what you are doing is not good. And what Jethro did then was gave him some advice, a model to share the leadership load, to include other people in the leadership journey, and to take these other people with him, that Moses was to take these other people with him on the leadership journey. So if you read the passage in Exodus 18, what you read about is that Moses was to appoint some people to lead 10, some people to lead 50, some to lead hundreds, some to lead thousands, and that together this group of connected leaders were to basically lead God's people, to care for God's people, and to help them get to the promised land. I guess as a leader, that's what you want to do, if we can kind of work with that image or that metaphor, that God has something that he wants to do in the lives of the people around us. He wants to lead us into the mission. There's some promise that he wants to lead us into. And our role as leaders is not just to do it ourselves, but actually to take other people with us on this journey. Now Jethro, at the end of that teaching that he gives in Exodus 18, tells Moses what will be the outcome if Moses would take his advice. And there are two outcomes that Jethro talks about. The first one is, he says, Moses, you won't burn out. If you do what I'm asking you to do here, if you organize your people, if you organize God's people, then you won't burn out because you'll share the leadership burden. So that's number one. And the second thing that Jethro says to Moses is that you'll meet the needs of these people, because at the moment you can't. You're trying to do all this by yourself and you just can't meet the kind of need that needs to be met. So I want to encourage you, if you're a young leader starting out on the leadership journey, to read Exodus chapter 18, the passage that I'm referring to there. And what I'm going to teach you in the Resolute Leader really builds upon the principles that are spoken about, given by Jethro to Moses way back in the day. And I want to really encourage you that that advice, the principles that are taught there, really does work. And that many leaders over the years make reference to the Jethro model or Jethro's teaching. Most recently, Tom Rainer has done a little bit of work in this particular area. But I don't think there's a book out there as comprehensive as this one. And teaching is foundational, as you'll get in this book, that will help you really get going as an emerging leader. Dr. Paul Borden, who's one of the people who recommend this book, says that there's a lot of theory around leadership, but there's not a lot of really practical advice. And he says the value of this book and these principles is it takes theories, but it actually really grounds them down in practical application so that you can actually do something with the teaching you receive. So after 20 years now, I look back at that formative moment when I stood at the scene of that murder and pleaded to God that he could just help me learn how to lead. I can look back on that moment and say, actually, Jethro really got me going as a leader. Jethro really helped me out and has done all these years in stepping out some pretty basic leadership advice that actually works. So over the next 6 or so videos, I'm going to introduce you to all of the elements in the book, The Resolute Leader, which really is built on the Jethro model or the teaching of Jethro in Exodus chapter 18. And my prayer for you is that as you take this leadership journey, that you'll really receive some solid foundation, some really excellent help so that you can make a great start as an emerging leader. So take the journey with us, look at the videos that are listed to come, and each step of the way, what I'll do is introduce you to the teaching of this book. And then of course you can, if you wish, buy the book yourself and actually deeply go through all the things that are listed there. So thanks for listening. Get ready for a practical ride, a ride that's really going to help you in your leadership journey. God bless you.